iOS app releases are up more than 80% in 2 years or less than 2 years. And if you're anyone like me, you probably run into a ton of vibe coded apps. And I got to say, over the last couple of years, yeah, I have seen significantly more of those. And many times you realize that a lot of these apps are solving problems that have already been solved by existing apps. This is what a study of over 100,000 GitHub developers just found. It's that agentic AI has made it cheaper than ever to build and ship an app, which I think we all kind of know that. But as far as total app usage goes, it's pretty much fallen flat. This is a post by Aleyda Solis, one of the most respected SEO and tech professionals currently. And she points this out from Jen Zhu, who actually posted this chart here. But I want to read Aleyda's comment because I think it kind of sums this up pretty succinctly. I love how doing good marketing and building an actual audience has become evidently now the key of success in SaaS at a time when anybody can quote vibe code an app, but then nobody uses it. And we go down here and she kind of points out, humble brag, but totally deserved because she has a lot of great content that she puts out there. She says, P.S. I'm delighted to see this as an SEO who has spent the years building social audience of 250K users / followers combined across platforms with an ecosystem of newsletters and marketing, and one of her new newsletters about to reach 50K subs, so forth. So the point here is that there's a lot of people that are creating these apps at scale, and they're treating it more or less as a shortcut to get to the top. And what we're finding out is many of these apps are getting shipped. You can see the releases have spiked here in 2026, but very few are being seriously used by people, right? And you could even see the reviews. So the reviews of apps spiked back here around, let's call it late 2024. And there's really an inverse correlation here between the amount of app releases and a decline in app reviews, just kind of furthering the point in general. Now, here's the NBER study where researchers looked at over 100,000 GitHub developers with AI usage. And this is across different generations of tools. What they found is that cumulative coding activity, this includes all the developer speak that you know, right? This includes commits, goes up by something like 180% with the most advanced tools. Now, it sounds like a lot, but when you kind of zoom out to the project level, that number actually drops down to about 50%. And what you get when you get to the actual releases, I should say, the software that ships and gets used, it falls maybe to around 30%. So the productivity gains are real, but they shrink at every stage of that pipeline. Now, with regards to the App Store, the same study looked at 4 major app marketplaces. So this includes the iOS App Store, and it found a moderate increase in new app submissions after agentic AI adoption became a thing. But the total usage didn't move at all, right? So the share of apps that achieved any kind of meaningful adoption, they didn't move. And when what you get is kind of more stuff, more creation, vibe code creation, slop, but not more successful and productive output. And so I think that's a distinction that really matters to a lot of us, because I know myself included, we've seen a lot of people put out new apps and new tools that are promised to be these innovative, never before created outputs. But in reality, that's pretty far from it. These are all gated. Now, Evan Spiegel also commented on this. He said in a recent interview that distribution has become the most important moat. And he used Snapchat as an example, where competitors could replicate features, but they couldn't replicate the audience and the distribution network that Snap had built. And so that's the same principle, I think, that's playing out in this App Store data. You can now generate an app with AI really easily, but you can't generate that audience with AI. And that's sort of what Aleyda was alluding to in her Twitter post as well. Now, I love this bit here, why the productivity gains are compressed. So the research framing is, writing code versus shipping code. And that's actually, I think, a useful way to think about it, because AI has genuinely solved the typing the code problem. We can prompt it. It's going to create that output for us. We're much more hands-off than we've ever been. But where it hasn't moved the needle is everything beyond that. So this includes deployment pipelines. This is the infrastructure, right? The safeguards, the monitoring, integration. And most importantly, there's that product market fit. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying before, where we've seen an uptick in apps that they all kind of do the same thing. So getting someone to care about your app and come back to it is still a fully human problem. And that's really where the issue lies, because AI is lowering the cost of generating and submitting apps, but it doesn't address that key. Well, first of all, it doesn't address the distribution, the retention, and operations piece, but it also doesn't but it also doesn't address that more core human principle, which is engagement and brand building and audience cultivation and all those organic roots of a proper marketing and brand building campaign that you just can't get from just firing off a vibe coded app that first of all, you don't even, a lot of times they'll fire these things off and they haven't done the proper checks, make sure they're safe, make sure they're secure for users, make sure they're fully functional. And then secondly, they're not really solving that problem or maybe that problem's already been solved that app's supposed to be solving, if that makes sense. So again, I think the biggest takeaway from all this is that the productivity advantage from agentic AI tools is real, right? I mean, the people that are out there promoting, oh, you can, do a lot of your repetitive tasks much faster. You could speed up processes. You can achieve your goals in faster timeframes. There is truth in that, but I think we have to be a little careful and kind of watch ourselves before we fall into the snake oil trap where people say, oh, you can just vibe code anything and create these apps that'll print money for you. I see so many YouTube videos titled quickest way to 10K a month. Just make an app, right? Just vibe code an app. You don't even have to know coding. And I think that's inherently misleading, right? And we can see that here in this analysis, but I think we all kind of knew that going in. But seeing the data here the data doesn't lie, of the app usage skyrocketing, the app usage going down, but the app numbers skyrocketing, I think that kind of drives that point home that maybe we should pump the brakes a little bit and really think more in basic marketing and basic brand building terms. And I think if anyone's out there doing client work, we're going to see this play out in a lot of client conversations as well. If you're advising someone on their digital presence, the question used to be, how do we get our site to rank, right? If you're doing Google SEO, or, how do we win at paid ads? But it's increasingly becoming, or it should increasingly be becoming, how do we build an audience that follows us wherever the algorithm takes us, right? Because if you have that audience, you have that trust, you have that kind of organic basis behind your brand, then you're not as at the mercy of algorithm updates as others out there. And you'll have a distinct advantage in your field. And this is the exact kind of shift I think anyone thinking about their digital marketing presence needs to be concerned with, right? Whether it's your website, your search visibility, pretty much anything that involves you and an internet connection. You got to stop and pay attention and make sure you're doing it the right way and building things organically. I've helped hundreds of businesses do this, and I'd love to talk to you as well. So if you want to learn more, leave a like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.